Do you think it's possible to fall in love with someone after they've already saved your life? Emily Carter didn't mean to ask it out loud. The words just spilled from her lips, trembling with the weight of everything she'd been holding in for months. She stood on the front porch of their small apartment, staring out into the night, where the world still felt like a fragile dream she wasn't quite sure she deserved. Behind her, Roderick hadn't answered. Not yet. The air between them was thick, charged with something neither of them could name. It wasn't just gratitude anymore. It wasn't just survival. It was something deeper, more terrifying, and far more real. Emily's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her ears. She had been abandoned before, betrayed, left to pick up pieces she didn't even break. But now, standing here with a man who had done nothing but stay, she was suddenly more afraid of hope than hunger. Because if she allowed herself to believe in him, in this, everything could change. And if you stay with this story just a few more minutes, you're about to witness a decision that will completely change all three of their lives forever. Mommy, is it bad that I'm not hungry anymore, even though my tummy is making noises? 8-year-old Lily whispered the words as she tightened the frayed sleeves of her jacket. Her older sister, Emily Carter, didn't respond immediately. She simply kept walking, her grip tightening on 2 oversized plastic bags filled with aluminum cans, crushed soda bottles, and torn cardboard. It was 6:12 a.m. The sun hadn't fully risen over Detroit's old industrial district, and the air was sharp with frost. They'd walked 6 blocks already, Emily limping from a stabbing ache in her side, a pain that had been growing steadily over the last few weeks. She hadn't told Lily just how much it hurt. She couldn't. Not when the little girl still had enough innocence left to smile at stray cats and wave at city buses they'd never afford to ride. Today's goal: get enough for breakfast, medicine, and one more night at the rundown boarding house they called home. When they reached the recycling depot, the same gruff man greeted them, but something was off. "Prices dropped again," he said without apology, jotting numbers into his worn-out notebook. "Cardboard's down 10 cents a pound." Emily stared at him, heart sinking. "Yesterday we got almost $100. This is more than yesterday." "Market's down, not my fault," he grunted, handing her 4 wrinkled 20s and a few coins. $82. She smiled faintly and thanked him, because pride had no room left in her life. Lily didn't ask for more details. She had learned to read her sister's silence. As they walked away, Lily spotted movement behind a rusted fence. A skeletal dog, patches of fur, missing eyes sunken from hunger, stood trembling on 3 legs. Emily was already steps ahead when she heard Lily gasp. "Wait!" The girl dropped her small bag and ran toward the fence. "Emily, he's cold. He's hungry too." Emily turned, jaw clenched. "We don't have time." But then she watched as Lily pulled a crust of bread from her coat pocket saved from the day before and pushed it through the wire toward the dog. "He needs it more," Lily whispered. Emily's heart cracked open. She should have scolded her, should have grabbed her hand and walked away. Instead, she just watched silently until the dog devoured the bread and licked Lily's fingers with the last ounce of trust left in his broken body. They didn't know it, but from across the street, someone was watching them. Roderick Whitmore, 38, CEO of Whitmore Development Corporation, stood beside his parked Tesla, sipping the last of his morning espresso. He wasn't supposed to be here. His schedule had called for a high-stakes meeting with Japanese investors downtown. Instead, he'd asked his assistant to cancel the meeting at the last minute, claiming a family emergency. It was a lie, and he didn't know why he'd said it. Lately, the blueprints on his desk had begun to blur into something colder than concrete. The new project, redeveloping a block of old buildings near the heart of the city, was worth millions. But it meant displacing dozens of tenants, old men, single moms, kids. He had seen Emily and Lily from his car earlier that week, passing by on their usual route to the depot. He hadn't planned on following them, but he did. And now, watching them from behind a tinted window, he felt something crack in his own chest. Later that morning, Emily sat with Lily outside a gas station, counting out coins on the pavement. They had just enough for 1 boiled egg and a bottle of water. Emily tore the egg in half. "You eat it," she said. "But 1, please, just today." Lily took her half reluctantly. She was about to eat when the skeletal dog reappeared, dragging his body behind a trash can, eyes fixed on the food. And Lily, without a word, handed her half to the dog. Roderick stood frozen across the street. He had left his car behind. The sun caught the side of his face. This wasn't pity. It was something heavier, a dull ache, a memory he couldn't quite place. Then, like the slow fall of dominoes, everything started to shift. That evening, Emily collapsed outside their boarding room. Her vision blurred, her breathing shallow. Lily screamed for help, banging on the neighbor's door, but no one opened. Roderick had returned to the area, unsure why, maybe to speak to the building landlord, maybe to scout the site again. When he saw Lily crying and Emily crumpled on the concrete, he didn't think twice. He ran, fast, fell to his knees. "She's burning up," he muttered, lifting Emily's limp body into his arms. "Don't take her," Lily screamed, panicked. "Where are you taking her?" "To a clinic, I promise. Follow me." Lily ran barefoot down the block beside him, not letting him out of her sight. Inside the private urgent care center, under fluorescent lights and sterile air, Emily stirred awake. Panic flickered in her eyes. "Where's my sister? Where's Lily?" "I'm right here," the girl said, climbing onto the bed. Roderick stood beside them, his jacket now stained from the street. "You're safe, both of you." Emily tried to sit up. "I can't pay for this." "You don't have to. I don't take charity. It's not charity. It's help from one human being to another." But Emily's walls were thick, built from years of betrayal, fear, and survival. She turned to Lily. "Do you trust him?" Lily nodded without hesitation. He didn't leave. He stayed. Emily looked back at Roderick and whispered, "Just until I get better. That's all." Roderick nodded, a tightness in his throat he hadn't felt in years. That's all. But even he knew nothing would be the same after this. And from that moment forward, everything, his plans, his beliefs, even his version of success, would begin to unravel. We're so sorry to pause the story here, just when it's getting even more intense. But let us ask you this. If you saw a child give her only meal to a stray dog, would you have walked away or stepped in? If this story touched your heart even a little, please tap that like button and drop a heart to let us know. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. Emily hadn't slept in a real bed in weeks, but now under the soft cotton sheets of a private clinic, she couldn't rest. Her body ached, yes, but it was her mind that raced with panic. The bright walls, the hum of machines, the sterile air. Everything felt too clean, too quiet, too unfamiliar. Across the room, Lily had fallen asleep, curled up in a chair, still wearing her worn-out sneakers. She was hugging the school backpack someone had given her months ago, now filled with bottles of water and a wrapped sandwich from the clinic staff. Someone, maybe a nurse, maybe him, had made sure she ate, and he was still there. Roderick Whitmore sat in the corner, eyes locked on the window. He hadn't said a word in the last hour. His expensive jacket was draped over a plastic chair, his dress shirt wrinkled and untucked. He looked completely out of place, and yet, something about him seemed painfully human in that moment. Emily tried to sit up, groaning, as the pain in her stomach returned. "Careful," Roderick said, standing immediately. "The doctor said it's a stomach infection. You've also got severe anemia. You need rest and medication." She looked at him with narrowed eyes. "And how much does all this cost?" He hesitated. "Don't lie to me. The consultation plus meds and basic care, about $2,000. Maybe more depending on how long you stay." Emily's breath caught in her throat. That was more than 2 months' worth of collecting trash. That was impossible. "I'll pay for it," Roderick added quickly. "And before you say anything, I'm not doing this for pity or applause." "Then why?" Her voice cracked. "Why would someone like you care about someone like me?" Roderick paused, choosing his words like they were glass. "Because for the first time in years, I looked at someone and didn't see a statistic or a business opportunity. I saw a person. I saw you and Lily." Emily looked at her sleeping sister. The guilt burned deep in her chest. Lily deserved so much more. Shoes that fit, a warm home, a chance at school, a childhood, not scraps and shelters and danger on every corner. Roderick sat down beside her bed, speaking quietly. "Let me help. Just until you're well. No strings attached." "There's always a string," she whispered. "Always." "No strings," he repeated. "But I'll be honest, I can't walk away from this. From you." Silence filled the room. Then unexpectedly, Lily stirred, sat up, and rubbed her eyes. "Is Emily better yet? I'm getting there, sweetheart," Emily replied with a tired smile. Lily turned to Roderick. "Are you still helping us?" Roderick nodded. "If you'll let me." The little girl stood and reached for Emily's hand. "Say yes," she whispered. "Please." And just like that, Emily Carter did something she hadn't done in years. She said yes to someone's kindness. But accepting help was only the beginning. 2 days later, Emily stood just outside the clinic with a bag of prescriptions and a new fear. What now? Roderick pulled up in his car and rolled down the window. "Ready? Ready for what?" "To see your new place." "I already have a place," she muttered. "A moldy room with one bed and peeling walls." "Well, now you have options." Roderick had found them a small apartment, just 4 blocks from Lily's school and less than a mile from a community clinic. The place wasn't glamorous, nothing like where Roderick lived, but it was warm, safe, and dry. There was even a small kitchen, a real stove. Emily didn't step inside at first. She stood frozen in the hallway, her hands shaking. "What's wrong?" Roderick asked. "I don't know how to live like this." "Like what?" "Like, I'm not waiting for everything to fall apart." Roderick didn't rush her. He didn't tell her to be grateful. He just opened the door and waited. Later that evening, after Lily had picked her own bed for the first time in her life, Emily sat on the floor with Roderick staring at the walls. "I need to do something," she said suddenly. "I need to work. I need to earn this." "You don't owe me anything." "I do," she snapped, then caught herself. "I'm sorry, I've always had to fight for everything. I don't know how to accept anything for free." "Then it's not free. It's a deal." She looked at him. "You said you used to sew." Emily nodded. "Used to work at a factory, before it shut down. If you had the tools again, machine space fabric, could you build something I could try?" "Then let's try." The next day, Roderick took her to a fabric outlet and watched her face light up as she ran her fingers over textures she hadn't touched in years. He bought her the sewing machine she said was too nice for someone like me. Back at the apartment, she set up a little corner workshop near the window. She worked late into the night, and for the first time in a long time, Emily Carter wasn't just surviving, she was building something. But she was also afraid of getting used to comfort, of depending on someone, of wanting more than what she thought she deserved. And Roderick, he was afraid too, of crossing a line, of feeling too much, of caring for someone who might never let him all the way in. Still, he showed up every day, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with new school books for Lily, sometimes with nothing but a quiet presence. Something was changing, and they both felt it. Like a storm building far out at sea, still silent, but inevitable. We know it's hard to pause here, right when everything seems to be shifting, but we'd love to know your thoughts. Do you think it's possible to truly trust someone again after life has taught you not to? If this story moved you even a little, please tap the like button and drop a heart to show your support. Your encouragement helps us continue bringing emotional human stories like this to life. The fabric store smelled of cottonwood and something deeper, something like dreams returning to life. Emily stood by the counter, her fingers trailing across a roll of sky blue linen. She didn't notice the cashier watching her or Lily dancing down the aisle with a bolt of floral print cotton in her arms. She was too busy imagining what she could turn that fabric into. A dress, a life, a future. Behind her, Roderick stepped closer. "You like it?" Emily looked up, startled. "It's beautiful, but it's too expensive." Roderick smiled softly. "You said that last time, and the time before." She turned back to the roll of fabric. "Because it still feels like someone else's life, but it's yours now." It had been nearly 6 months since Emily and Lily left the boarding house behind, since that night in the clinic when everything shifted. Roderick had kept his promise, no strings, no pressure, just quiet, consistent presence. What began as a small corner sewing space in their apartment grew into something real. Word spread fast. A few mothers from Lily's school asked for uniform repairs, then teachers, then neighbors. And before long, Emily Carter wasn't just sewing clothes, she was running a business. Her business. Roderick had found a tiny retail space on the edge of the neighborhood. Nothing fancy but bright, with huge windows and worn wooden floors that felt like home. Emily named it Threaded Grace, a name she said came to her in a dream though Roderick always suspected it came from somewhere deeper. One evening, just after closing, Roderick arrived with Lily in tow. The girl burst through the door, first waving a paper. "I got an A," she shouted, "in writing, and my teacher said my essay made her cry." Emily grinned, brushing a stray thread off her apron. "What was it about you?" Lily said. "And him." Roderick raised an eyebrow. "Me," Lily nodded proudly. "It was called The Man Who Showed Up. Shirom." They all laughed, but Emily's eyes softened. After dinner that night, roast chicken, fresh bread, and homemade apple pie, none of which would have been possible 6 months ago, Emily stayed behind on the porch as Roderick walked Lily to bed. When he returned, the air between them shifted. "I read her essay," he said, easing onto the step beside her. "She called you her hero. She saved me long before I saved her." Emily murmured. "You know that, right?" Roderick nodded. "And me? What am I?" Emily looked at him, her eyes shimmering. "You're the part of our story I never saw coming." He smiled, but then grew quiet. "I've been offered something," he said. Her chest tightened. She knew that tone. A massive development project. In London. Emily inhaled sharply. How long? 3 years. Maybe more. Silence settled between them like fog. "You'd go?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I'd only go if you both came with me." She blinked. "London. That's a world away. It's also a chance to start fresh. A real design studio. Schools for Lily. A life you never dared to dream." Emily looked away out into the quiet street. "I just got used to breathing here." "I know." She stood pacing. Her mind raced with doubt, fear, guilt. And yet there it was again, that ache inside her chest. The one that whispered, "What if more is possible?" "Do you love me?" she asked, suddenly turning to face him. Roderick stood. "More than I've ever loved anyone." "Would you wait if I said no? I'd wait forever." She stared at him for a long moment. Then finally she nodded. "Then we go." The following weeks flew by in a whirlwind of passports, logistics, and tearful goodbyes. But on their final day in Detroit, Emily stood in the center of her shop, now empty, and whispered a quiet thank you to the space that gave her a second chance. When their plane touched down in London, Lily pressed her face to the window. "Everything looks new." "Because it is," Emily whispered, holding her hand. They didn't know what waited for them, but they knew what they were bringing with them. Each other. 1 year later, Threaded Grace London opened its doors. Not just a sewing studio, but a school. A refuge, a space for women who had once believed they had no voice, no value. Roderick, now less businessman and more dream builder, stood beside Emily on opening day. Lily cut the ribbon with golden scissors and smiled for the cameras like a natural. And when someone asked who they were, Emily said only this: we're a family. Built by chance, held together by choice. A year ago, they had nothing. Now they had everything that mattered. We're so grateful you stayed with us through this incredible journey, but now we want to hear from you. Do you believe that people can rebuild not just their lives, but their hearts after trauma? Would you leave everything behind to follow the people who saved your soul? How did this story make you feel? If it touched you, comment no 3 below. If it didn't quite resonate, comment number 1. And if you felt neutral, number 2. Also, tell us what country are you watching from. We love hearing from our global family. If you found meaning in this story, please hit like, drop a heart, and share it with someone who might need hope today.